The dynamic that is emerging right now is we will, anytime you innovate or do something new, we will take your Bitcoin and then we will throw it in our strategic reserve. There's no law about hiding dollars under your mattress. It's a free speech issue. It's a privacy issue. They don't want us to have financial freedom. Congress needs to pass some things protecting Bitcoin. I hate to say it. It has to become like economic Gaza. They're not going to support politicians who go after Bitcoin. It's a self-licking ice cream cone. Like, it exists to grow. It's going to grow and get great big, like a big old tumor. Don't brag too much about how much Bitcoin you have. You're going to have people coming after you.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow plebs. My name is Walker, and this is the Bitcoin Podcast. Bitcoin continues to make new blocks every 10 minutes, and the value of one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. If you are listening to this right now, remember, you're still early. This episode is brought to you by Blockware. What if you could lower your tax bill and stack Bitcoin at the same time? Well, with Blockware, you can. New U.S. tax rules let miners write off 100% of their mining hardware in a single year. So earn Bitcoin daily while saving big come tax season. Get started at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/Titcoin. Use the code Titcoin to get $100 off your first miner when using the Blockware marketplace. This is not tax advice, so go speak to the team at Blockware to learn more. That's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/Titcoin. Head to the show notes for links to find the show on centralized social media platforms and on Nostr, or just go directly to bitcoinpodcast.net. You'll find it all there. And kind reminder that you can support this show by becoming a paid subscriber on Fountain. Or don't, Bitcoin doesn't care, but I sure do appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into this Bitcoin talk. Angela, great to have you here. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I think it was, I'm trying to think what it was that finally reminded me that I needed to have you on this show. I believe it was a poem that either you or AI wrote, I'm not sure, but perhaps about government shutdowns. I'm trying to remember, but it was some sort of a poem or a limerick of sorts where I was like, you know what, I should reach out.
The night before the shutdown, maybe something like that.
Yes, that was it. That was it. I appreciated it, and yeah, I was like, you know what, it's about time for me to reach out. So thank you for coming on here. It's really a pleasure and an honor to have you on here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
There are a bunch of things I want to talk with you about because you've been quite came on my radar like a number of years ago, and you've been quite at the center of a lot of things. Not that you're trying to put yourself at the center, but more so people have been paying attention to you because you've been getting things done. You've taken a very interesting and pragmatic approach, I think, to libertarianism as it relates to the political party's activism. Yeah. And I think obviously gotten some incredible results, like, playing basically the key role in getting Ross freed, which was, I think, everybody who is not a complete statist cuck believes is an incredible thing. So thank you for that. I mean, maybe can we just maybe start out? How did you actually get into becoming involved politically with the Libertarian Party? Like, what was that? I think you were working in law for a number of years. How did you actually get into like being politically very active, like deciding that you needed to go down that path?
So first of all, I want to say getting active in the Libertarian Party and rising through their ranks it's actually not that hard if you have a very high tolerance for being like irritated. It's, you just have to like be able to withstand things that are annoying. So yeah, my background is, just civil litigation paralegal. I do a lot of, I was, like working with attorneys that do constitutional law, especially when it comes to real estate and real property, complex business litigation. I don't know, right? Just like dealing with lawsuits. I really like lawsuits. I think it's very fun. And I was just generally active in local politics in the city of LA. So I worked on, I helped this group called Monday Night Mission over a decade ago overturn a proposed ban on food. They called it food sharing and public rights of way, which is feeding homeless people, which is totally nuts. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole, right? But, they had this motion that they were going to pass, and it was like pretty much in the bag. Everybody was in support of it. And in about 8 days, we flipped it PR wise and held a huge protest and smacked it down. And we brought together, there were like left-wing anarchist groups like Food Not Bombs, who I was also involved in a little bit, very right-leaning church groups. And it was really fun to like, win um, win. And there's a lot of issues with the homeless community in LA, but those are not going to be solved by telling people you literally can't. The law was so out of control. It was that you weren't going to be allowed to have a picnic in the park with your friends. Obviously, there was going to be selective enforcement, but the way that it was written is you literally cannot share food in public, which is just it's nuts. I'm like, this is not how we solve problems. It's typical government, like insanity. So, after that, I worked on a number of other issues. I worked on a medical freedom initiative. California's got one of the worst medical freedom situations in the country. I worked to try to overturn a ban on religious exemptions for vaccines in schools. We pretty much got the number of signatures to do a referendum, but that was my first time encountering feds and subterfuge, and it was like hundreds of boxes of signatures were stolen. So it was a really eye-opening experience. Yeah. And so after that, I started getting involved in the Libertarian Party, and like I think I'd gone to a couple of like events or meetups in 2014, and then I kind of circled back in 2016 and decided to get active. And it was like a small, scrappy, group of people, but I was very interested. I'm like, well, where do the libertarians go? And it's like, well, they go to Panera Bread and argue about stuff, but occasionally get things done. So that was kind of like my very first entry into it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that Panera was the go-to meeting place of
I
the
mean, for
Libertarian
that
Party.
group it was, they
Yeah,
had a
yeah, yeah.
very
Okay.
lively, lively meeting at Panera Bread. Just took over half the restaurant.
Well, I can imagine the rest of the folks there were probably quite confused and maybe
Yeah,
alarmed at
they're
all
like,
of
what
the
is
the the,
all
the, the non-statism happening there. That must have been shocking.
yes. Lots of like a giant horde of people in taxation and theft shirts. So like, what is this?
I love it. I love it. Well, so okay, so that's interesting. I mean, there's probably a bunch of different rabbit holes to go down there, and we can maybe circle back on some. But I wanted to maybe ask a little bit too about the whole situation with Ross, because I think this is something that was particularly contentious for a lot of folks within the Libertarian Party. This idea that you were somehow and the Libertarian Party was somehow, like kowtowing to Trump and trying to, this was like, what are we doing? Putting our support behind a red or blue team candidate. We should be, focused on, the third way. But then it worked. Like Ross, thank God, like Ross is free now. He's back with his family. It's incredible. Like seeing that image of him walking out of the jail holding that little plant was like one of that must have just been incredible for you. That was incredible
Surreal.
for anyone, I think, but like just
Surreal.
amazing. Like just wow. But can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think this kind of goes to this deeper philosophy that I've seen from listening to you speak and seeing, various posts that you've had. You have a very pragmatic approach to how you
Yes.
view the role of of a third party. Can you talk about that a little bit and maybe talk about it first in the context of Ross and getting Ross free and like actually driving some sort of meaningful action? What if you could lower your tax bill and stack Bitcoin at the same time? Well, by mining Bitcoin with Blockware, you can. New tax guidelines from the Big Beautiful Bill allow American miners to write off 100% of the cost of their mining hardware in a single tax year. That is right, a 100% write-off. So if you have $100,000 in capital gains or income, you can purchase $100,000 worth of miners and offset it entirely. Blockware's mining as a service enables you to start mining right now without lifting a finger. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. You get to stack Bitcoin at a discount every single day, while also saving big come tax season. Get started today by going to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/Titcoin. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/Titcoin. Use the code Titcoin to get $100 off your first miner when using the Blockware marketplace. Of course, none of this is tax advice from me. Go speak with the team at Blockware to learn more. One more time, that is mining.blockwaresolutions.com/Titcoin. Wish you could access cash without selling your Bitcoin? Ledden makes that possible. The global leader in Bitcoin-backed lending, Ledden has issued over $10 billion in loans since 2018 and has a perfect record of protecting client assets. Why is a Ledden loan different? Well, with custodied loans, collateral is not lent out to generate interest. No credit checks, no monthly payments. Apply in minutes and repay whenever you want, with zero penalties. And proof of reserves reports verified by a top accounting firm are published every 6 months. Ledden gives Bitcoin holders a secure, transparent way to unlock liquidity without selling. Learn more at ledden.io/walker. That's LEDN.io/walker.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can call it pragmatic. It's like the mechanics of it is more like crawling through broken glass to get something done. It is really challenging to move the needle in libertarian circles. So I have a huge appreciation for, libertarian academia. Like I'm a diehard Mises Institute supporter. I chair nationally the Mises Caucus, which is, not officially affiliated, but we were inspired by Ludwig von Mises and all the work done by the Mises Institute. Um, but academia doesn't move the needle politically. And it often becomes a circular firing squad. And you'll see this academic saying, these guys aren't real libertarians and this isn't that, and this big fight. And there's just so much I want to unpack here. Formerly in the Libertarian Party, there was this group called the Pragmatist Caucus. And I thought, well, that's interesting, like, because they're like, liberty doesn't happen overnight. And so when I look at what the Pragmatist Caucus is doing, like, they just wanted to take pragmatic positions, not move the needle forward. I felt like nobody was really trying to actually advance. Like, we just want to come up with the best policy position or the best idea or theory. But I'm like, well, why don't we just do the thing, right? Nobody wants to do the thing. So, I kind of started tinkering, trying things. Like, let's hold a giant anti-war rally with a bunch of like leftists, right? Because they're the only other people. There's a handful of people who are really mad about the United States participation in the Russia-Ukraine war. So that was like a big thing, And we had some former, Tulsi Gabbard was a speaker there, and Ron Paul. So I started just kind of trying things, and it would blow things up. I'm like, well, why don't we work with this group on candidate support so our candidates can be less cringe, people get mad about that. So when Rick Grinnell approached me about Donald Trump, I was very open to the idea because I was like, I just want to do something. I just want to like make it happen. So it's like, I don't know, 7 in the morning, some hour that I'm not awake. And it's I have a 2-year-old and he, his entire like life, he's a late night baby. So 7 a.m. is early for me when you have a child who goes to bed at midnight and, wakes up all night to breastfeed. So it's like 7 a.m. in the morning, late 2023. And I get this text message from Rick Grinnell saying, "Oh, hey, Angela. My name's Rick. I got your number from some mutual friends." I don't know what mutual friends I have with a former acting director of national intelligence. Um, so it's a little like kind of unnerving, right? But he's like, we really want to know what the libertarians think about President Trump. So I had a cup of coffee and composed myself, and then I was like responded, and Rick called me, and I did this thing that libertarians don't do, which is I was very diplomatic. And I said, like we have a lot of thoughts. We really like that he didn't start any new wars. We weren't really crazy about the drone strikes on General Soleimani. Um, different views on borders within the libertarian movement. But we love that he shook things up and we're very sympathetic to him that he experienced lawfare, and we hope he beats it because it's gross and wrong. And so I think, whoop, I'm losing my headphones. Sorry.
You're okay.
I think that went over really well. right? And so Rick was like, "Oh, let's keep talking. I'm not on his campaign team, but I'm a friend of his, you know." So I met with Rick. He like flew down to meet us from wherever. I think he lives on a plane. I don't think he lives in a house. I think he just flies all over the place. Um, and we had dinner with him, so it was very surreal. He was a former ambassador to Germany under President Trump's first administration. He's running the Kennedy Center right now, I think, and was like the special diplomat to Venezuela and problem countries um, in this most recent administration. And so we're having dinner with Rick talking about President Trump. Me, my husband, and he was like a year old at the time, almost a year old. Sorry, my cat is just screaming. Can you not do that? We're in an interview.
Don't worry,
And
pets are always welcome
sorry,
on this show.
it's okay, good. It's just Debbie. She's chonky and always hungry. Um, chunky spoiled house cats, like a lot of libertarians. And so anyway, Rick was like, President Trump's gonna call you right now. So he just called on Rick's phone and Rick just passed the phone to me. And I was just like sitting in this just like very like average restaurant in South Austin while Rick Grinnell holds my toddler and I talked to Donald Trump on the phone and I was like, what is my life? You know, it was crazy. And he was really sweet and grandfatherly. And he's like, he'd gone through my Twitter and done like at least 5 minutes of research about me, which I thought was very
Wow.
classy. Yeah. And I appreciated. And we just, like he was like, I want to get the vote. How do I get the libertarian vote? That Joe Jorgensen, she cost me the 2020 election. The Democrats were stealing, but Joe Jorgensen, he knew all about it. He was like, she got 5%. I was like, no, sir, she did not get
Yeah.
5%, but she did cost you the election, probably. I was like, Democrats stole from her too, by the way, 40,000 votes of hers, poof, disappeared in Pennsylvania. And so, basically I was like, I can't like endorse you, put you on the ballot, make it happen. That's just not like it's just not technically possible. But I can help you win the small L libertarian vote. Like if you want to compete for our votes, I can show you how to do that. Policy, like commitments, there's all kinds of things. And he was like, "Yes, yes, I want the vote. I want the vote. Let's keep talking to Rick. Let's keep talking. Let's work on it." I mean, that was the beginning of it, right? And so we continue to talk with Rick, and we got invited to go down to Mar-a-Lago, like, just a couple of weeks later. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, what am I gonna ask? And Rick is like, "The president is a deal maker. He's not a regular politician. You make the biggest ask you can, and he'll work on it. Maybe he'll work it down, you'll negotiate it, but don't be afraid to make a big ask." So, I started thinking, and I'm sure you could figure out what I came up with. Yeah. So, I am thinking like, what do the libertarians want to see? Well, in the Fed, this and that, all kinds of things, right? But I'm like, well, what can the president do? What can he actually just do on his own? And what is going to make all the libertarians just go absolutely crazy? And it's got to be whatever my ask is. It's got to be just wrapped in emotional appeal. That is so important. It's gotta be, like, a really good return on investment for him, and it's gotta tug on people's heartstrings, and I was like, "It's free Ross Ulbricht. That's it. Like, that's the ask," And Rick was like, "Make the ask." So,
Wow.
yeah. So I did,
And
right?
so
We went
you just did you just like come out with it like right away? Did you kind of like warm up the conversation, or did he get right into it?
No, we waited. I got to Mar-a-Lago. We're having dinner. It's like me, Rick, and just a couple of his staffers, trusted people. And President Trump was late because he was testifying in a Southern District of New York trial at that moment. So he was like
Right.
20 minutes late. Yeah, it's so surreal. And he comes running in, and everybody stands up to meet him, and he has such a presence. And the first thing he did was actually he apologized for being late. And he's like the master of this like side hug. If you've ever seen him hug people, it's crazy. And so I get like the masterful Trump side hug, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm late. I'm late. I came straight from trial, but I got a lot to say." It's just like from an attorney, from a trial perspective, having a client who will not get off the stand, I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot even imagine. Um, so we sit down for dinner, and we had already ordered because he had texted ahead telling us to order our food. So our food comes out, and he looks at my was like a tenderloin or a steak, and he's like, "Send that back. It's not done," because I'd ordered my food rare. And Rick's like, "President Trump, it's okay." He's like, "Oh, sorry, sorry. You're probably healthier than I am." So I got to eat
My
my
God.
food. Yeah, he ordered his steak well done, and he ate it with ketchup, and he did have a
So
Diet
that is
Coke.
true.
That's
I've heard that
100%
before.
true, yeah.
Okay.
He was also
Okay.
very sweet to his wait staff, which I also thought was a very good sign that they were comfortable around him. Nobody was tiptoeing around him. It's like, "Oh, this is like a real person," you know? 'Cause we've all been to dinner with someone who's just, like, tyrannical and horrible to the waitresses. It's so
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
No,
So,
it's usually a good sign, like, about a
yeah,
person.
it was a good sign. We talked about drug war. He was asking my boyfriend, my husband, "Have you ever smoked weed?" It's so crazy, you know? He's like, "It's okay, you can tell me." Um, oh, I'm so sorry I lost a headphone. Can you still hear me okay?
Can still hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good, I can still hear you. We'll just let that one go. Um,
Okay.
so we were talking about that. We were talking about the border crisis, like, "Oh, maybe drug dealers, death penalty, maybe not such a good idea." He was totally open to everything we were saying, which is just totally wild. We're talking about how important economics is, the treasury, foreign policy, and we're just kind of like brainstorming. I was like, what if you moved marijuana from like class one to class two? That won't be quite so controversial with the Republicans, and it would balance out your fentanyl stuff. And he was just really open. He's like, oh, this, oh, that, what do you think? So finally it's like, well, what do I do? What's the most important thing to get the vote? And he wanted to speak at our convention. He's like, "Can you make that happen? Can I speak at your national convention?" And I'm like, "Well, that'll be, um, political suicide for me internally, but yeah." So that's when I wrapped it up in a nice little bow. I said, "I think if you come to our convention and you say, you walk out on stage and you say you'll free Ross Ulbricht, I think you can come to the convention if you do that, and I think that, first of all, everyone's heads will explode. They will all scream. They will all vote for you, all the libertarians, and the Bitcoiners will vote for you, and they'll give you their money." And he went, "Huh, who's Russ Ulbricht? I'll do it. I'll walk out on stage and I'll say, 'Free Russ Ulbricht,' mic drop." And I just, like, I mean, I've been, stressing over this for a few weeks. I'm like praying about it. I'm thinking like, I do this, it has to happen because I can't get his hopes up, his mother's hopes up, you know.
Right.
I was like tied up in, and he's just like, "Yeah, I'll do it." It was insanity. I didn't even know what to think
Just
in the
like that.
just like that. Just like that.
Wow. And then I mean
So,
he actually did do it, right? Like
yes,
it wasn't bluster. He did follow through. And he followed through not just with commuting the sentence, but with a full pardon. Was that
a
part of
full
the initial ask, or did that happen at like later? Was
that
that a surprise
that
even?
happened 4 days before the inauguration. So, I worked pretty closely with his team. I passed them all the work his attorney had done because his attorneys had been, for over a decade, getting signatures of this person and all this advocacy. I passed it all over. We work on this convention poll with the libertarians. What are the top issues you want President Trump to talk about? And I'm telling everybody, you damn well better vote for Ross Ulbricht on this poll, calling everybody, make sure you vote, please put Ross on, and they're watching it and they're listening to me, and I, some of, they met with President, President Trump met with Lynn, his mother. I got her, meetings with other people, like, Cash Patel's texting me, like, "We're gonna get him out. We're gonna get him out." It's crazy, right? It's crazy. All these people are like, "Don't worry, Angela. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it." And, the election happens and I'm feeding them all kinds of data on Chase Oliver. I'm like, that's our libertarian presidential candidate. I'm like, "Here's video of him, in a rainbow cape at Pride Parade, screaming that voting and gender are non-binary, and like, here's some more stuff, and here's and they're just like, "Oh, this is amazing," because they were so happy. They were so happy with Chase Oliver as the nominee. When I
I
told
bet.
them that, they
I
were like,
bet.
"Yes!" I could hear the whole room cheer when I was on the phone with their campaign. Yeah, couldn't have gone better. Um, and so then, the election happens, and I don't hear from them nearly as much for like 6 weeks because they're busy. And I'm just like, "Oh my gosh." Am I gonna get the BLM treatment, like how Biden, kicked out BLM after he won? I'm like, "Ah." And it's like 4 days before the inauguration, which I was going to, and, I had a nice seat before the rain and everything happened. I just get this text from someone up the top saying, "Ross Ulbricht, clemency or full pardon?" And it's like, "Ooh, don't mess this up," I just kinda had to compose myself, and I'm like, "Oh, full pardon, please, if that's possible. Thank you so much." And I followed it
Wow.
up with a message about Roger Ver, because by that time I had started to work on that. And they were just like, "Done. Promises made, promises kept." It's just,
Wow.
like, so phenomenally classy, just a class act the whole way through.
I mean, it was incredible to see the full pardon because obviously, like for those of us on the outside, I think a lot of us just assumed this would be okay. Ross is free, sentence commuted, but maybe the pardon was going to be a bridge too far. But to see that go through, I think was and like justly deserved, right? I mean, I cannot imagine what he and his family went through, and so that must have been just like such a relief, like what a burden off your shoulders. Like it's not just a commutation. Like this is a presidential pardon. Like that's as good as you could get.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was, so, like, on inauguration day, my phone is just, like, blowing up. I was, like, physically ill from stress by that time, like, having a Crohn's flare, that I hadn't had in a few years. Like, it was tense, so I'm, like, holed up in DC waiting, the next day. I'm like, "It hasn't happened yet," and they're like, "Don't worry, it's coming. We're just a few hours behind on everything." It's like it was kind of like at a conference or at a convention when things run late. That's what the inauguration and everything was like. And so right when people there was just a crescendo of insanity about it. And I'm like, "I can't look at the internet. I can't look. I'm being roasted alive." People are like, "I lost my bed. He's not gonna do it." They're like, "It's done." And I call Lynn Ulbricht. She's on the phone with the president, you know, finding out her son, and it was so fast. It wasn't like this J6 or drama where they start moving him around and trying to hide him. Someone on the president's staff calls the prison, and they gotta do it. I think they have, like, 24 hours to comply, but it's like they expect it within 1 hour, so he was out.
Wow. I mean, that's just like still hearing this now. It's just so surreal, and I can only imagine even more surreal for you and for Ross and his family as well. I mean, but what an incredible saga, and it was great to see that actually. Like, it was a very heartening moment,
Yeah.
seeing that actually go through that actually happened, and I think it was a great example of let's say just a third party, a third option, a third movement being able to move the needle on something that really matters, like not just
Yes.
matters for Ross and his family, but actually matters in terms of the message that sends, right? The message that sends about the fact that he was in prison for so long, a double life sentence, 40 years plus 40 years without the possibility of parole, that he was just absolutely made an example of in this insane way when no victims were even named at his trial. Like that, seeing him walk free, I think just sent a message that like, look, this stuff matters, and you as an individual or as a not a red or blue team person can move the needle. And like
Yes.
and this kind of brings me back to like the larger idea of, is this how you view, or I should say, how do you view the role of the Libertarian Party, whether that's the big L libertarians or small L libertarians? How do you view the role of that in terms of actually enacting change? Is it about winning the elections and trying to take a big chunk of the vote, or is it about being a credible threat so that you have negotiating power? Do you know what I mean?
I do, and it's the latter. I mean, I think that we need to play kingmaker, and anybody who wants to help, by the way, and I have a whole bunch of pardon I'm still working on, go sign up at LP Mises Caucus, .com if you wanna actually move the needle. For 50 plus years, the party has been trying to win elections. They won some in the 80s. There was a whole thing with feds and Soros money, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole we can get down. This party's just got like wrecked. Um, but beyond that, I just think foundationally, like the vision wasn't there that was gonna it wasn't gonna sustain the party because they didn't plan this thing. They didn't lay a foundation to enact realistic change. And so when I came in, I kind of turned everything upside down. And like, we can do it. I tried it. It can be done. It can be repeated. It can be repeated. We need to kind of lean out of being spoiler, which is what the party has sort of settled into. That like, oh, well, we just spoil elections. Ha ha ha. This kind of this like Joker, nihilistic, burn it all down attitude. But then you slap the word liberty on it. Like, oh, because no one passed our purity test. We need to go from spoiler to fixer. And that's what we did with the Trump campaign. We just want to improve things. We want to make it better. For our first try, is it 100%? No. President Trump was not running a pure libertarian campaign. We're not going to get it 100%. There are going to be things that fall through the cracks, things that blow up. Sometimes those things are out of his hands. Sometimes whatever, maybe it's not. But the fact that we made any progress on our very first attempt is incredible. And so I think we need to do this over and over again. Every 2 years, every 4 years, libertarians need to pop up in the election cycle and say, these are our demands. If you can follow our demands, if you can pledge, if you can do XYZ, make it happen, we're gonna drop out of the race and we're gonna vote for you. And if you don't, if you put up like a Mitt Romney character, someone that's, like McCain centrist, neocon stuff, we're going to wreck you. We're going to wreck you in the polls. But you have to reward them when they do the right thing. And that's how you advance the needle. And you lose the power to do this, I think, when you give up your ballot access, because people are like, well, why don't you just join the Republican Party? No, because then it's just diluted out, then we're just 1% of the Republican Party. When we are 1% in the general election, 1.5%, that makes or breaks the election. And they know that. And that's where the power is. Hold on to your ballot access, hold on to your party, registration, just be willing to, dispense with your vote differently when the time comes.
I think that it's a great approach, and is another part of this something I've heard you talk about a little bit too, kind of getting back to that negotiation of trying to
Yes,
say, okay, yeah, like we'll drop out and endorse you, give you the votes, but also like we need to get something for that. Like you need to put some of our people into cabinet positions, or is that kind of part of the strategy as well? That other
absolutely.
side of this.
Absolutely. So, I'm trying to talk. I did some negotiating on Roger Vere's situation. And, a lot of that they don't want me to, make public yet because it's still little loose ends are being tied up. But that was a lot of heavy lifting. It was a lot of heavy lifting. And, thank you, voting bloc, for existing. But where was I going with that? What did you ask?
Just the like getting people from of the Libertarian Party or Libertarian mindset at least into positions, whether that be in the cabinet or other areas.
Here's midterm asks are like, please let our political prisoners go, right? Please do
Right.
this, please do that. General election, presidential year asks, we need to repeat what Kennedy did. And I worked pretty closely with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. too, towards the end, because the Libertarian Party entered into what's called a joint fundraising committee with him. He was running as an independent candidate, which meant the donations he could take from individuals were much smaller than a candidate who's running with a national party. And giving him that donor ability increased his reach and his political power. So he went into the negotiating position he went to the negotiating table with President Trump in a better position than had he been on his own. And so we sort of like boosted him to help him make what he did possible. And we need to repeat that every 4 years. So Kennedy goes in and he's like, maybe I'll drop out. And I think that they really were kindred spirits after that assassination attempt with everything that's gone on in the Kennedy family's legacy. But it's like, Kennedy's like, these are the things I'm passionate about. Like I'm very upset over all the COVID stuff. I'm very angry. I have a very different position than you. I'm very upset about how wrecked our health is, especially children. Like I can't just drop out and have no outcome. And people have spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get me to the top. How do we resolve this? Kennedy went in and he got a cabinet position out of it. And he got spots on the transition team. Um, And Amaryllis Fox was on the transition team, his campaign manager, and she is an absolute badass, and she was able to put more people in. Even with HHS running on a skeleton crew, the thing that happened was not just getting a few spots. The tide turned. And, a lot of people are very upset still about Gaza. They're very upset about Epstein files. They're very upset. And I hear you, and I don't want to diminish your concerns. But for the first time in history, in, I don't know, 100 years, the, the, we moved not just we didn't move the needle, we reversed course. And it's really challenging, to continue to make progress. But we have to keep doing that. I mean, so now we've reversed the direction of things. So now let's continue to push, there's a lot, there's just so many things we can do. I would love to, in 2028, send another Maha person and a Bitcoiner to the White House to negotiate as the Libertarian presidential and vice presidential candidate. Could you imagine? Hold on to HHS, expand, no more fights over the CDC director and that kind of nonsense. Have a Bitcoiner there who is making transition team picks on financial policy. This is the future of the Libertarian Party and Bitcoiners in our voting bloc. And I don't, I don't care about Libertarian Party activism. That's not important, right? You pop up every 2 to 4 years and do this and repeat and repeat and repeat, and we will completely change the course of history because they know that our votes matter.
I mean, I love that position you're taking on this because, again, I think that it's just very practical. It's about not how can we virtue signal with purity tests about, look at the sanctity of our positions, and none of them ever get implemented, and nobody ever gets into a position where they can meaningfully affect change, but hey, at least we passed our own purity test. It's no, what can we actually do? How can we genuinely move the needle by getting people in positions where they have actual political power? And
Yes.
you do that by exert, we do have leverage. We have leverage in the sense of, independent, libertarian or undecided voters who are principled and don't identify with the Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola duopoly, but are willing to, vote with their feet, right? And
Yes.
also who are, especially, you hinted at this earlier, but just with the Bitcoiner cohort, it's a cohort of individuals who have an increasingly significant amount of economic energy at their disposal.
Mm-hmm.
This is only going to increase, right? And so it's what do you do with that? What do you do with that? And there are a lot of Bitcoiners. I know a lot of Bitcoiners who've been in a lot longer than I have, who are sitting in, they've become quite wealthy now. And it's I don't just want to sit on this. I want to do something. I don't want to go retire to my citadel and cut myself off from the world. I want to try and make the world a little bit better. I want to actually move the needle. And it turns out that money is a great way to do that. But also you have to have the people in the positions that are going to affect change. And so I love the approach. And, one of the things that was brought up over and over when I asked people for questions about this interview was the samurai case. Because I think this is one of the things that Bitcoiners are really focused on right now, rightly so, because it's insane on so many levels, right? Can we talk about that a little bit and just kind of your position on it? If you think this is a reasonable one to potentially get a pardon on at some point or a commutation, because to me, this whole case is absurd and sets an insane precedent. These unlicensed money transmitter laws are just patently absurd, right? At the end of the day, you're putting people in jail and giving them egregious fines for writing open source software when they never even handled anyone's funds, right?
Didn't touch it.
This is insane. That is a dangerous precedent. Where are you at with this right now? What can people actively do at this point to try and help move the needle in this case?
Yes. Okay. So I have been in contact with the administration about it, as well as Roman Storm of Tornado Cash's case, which is basically the same thing, but with Ethereum. There's several cases like this. There's Roman Sterlingov, Bitcoin Fog. I don't even think he created it. He used it, and so
They
they were
accused him of creating it though, or something, right?
yeah, they accused him of creating it, but they're so bad at what they do. They're well, we found one person who used it, therefore you must have been the author of it. It's just totally insane. He is in prison right now, and I think he's got 6 years left. So these are free speech issues. They are privacy issues. There's no law about, you know, hiding dollars under your mattress. It's it's just crazy. And we're treating Bitcoin because it's a new emergent technology, it's new to them. It's still fairly new, and they don't fully understand it. Like they are wigging out over it. At least the Biden administration was. President Trump's administration has been a lot friendlier to it. Um, and so what I'm trying to convey is, it's a free speech issue, it's a privacy issue. Also, they didn't hurt anyone. They did not take anyone's they did not do what they were accused of, right? And like if you let this happen, Bitcoiners are not showing up in the midterms. The other thing that I think is so disturbing about this is that, we're pushing for a Bitcoin strategic reserve, at least a lot of the Bitcoin movement is. And if we can't fix these cases, the dynamic that is emerging right now is we will, anytime you innovate or do something new, we will take your Bitcoin and then we will throw it in our strategic reserve. And that's not the dynamic that we want, for this. But I think the administration is they're starting to become aware that like the Todd Blanche memo, is not it's not being followed. There are rogue prosecutors and districts like the Southern District of New York that hate President Trump. They hate the DOJ, new leadership. They hate us, and they're happy to tap dance on our graves and defy. Like they consider themselves as like woke warriors for real justice, real truth, that they're going to defy everything that President Trump and Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi say. So it's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. I mean, maybe one point to start on there is this. This is maybe zooming out a little bit, but this kind of like defy culture, right? This,
Yes.
because so much of the political is also cultural, I think, and so much of what moves the needle politically is ultimately cultural. And you see so many of these, I guess self-proclaimed activists, who are defying Trump or whatever, because clearly he's a democratically elected dictator. Or so they would have you believe.
So crazy.
He's trying to make himself a king, apparently. All of these things, which is just like, it's all steeped in hyperbole. It's all just really like, call out bad things. I'm generally the opinion, like, call out bad things when a politician does bad things. You don't need to make up bad things. They do plenty of bad things already. You can find them. Acknowledge good things when they do good things, because then they realize that, oh, people see when I do good things, and those will be rewarded with, public praise. But I mean, where do you think we're at with just let's say the cultural vibe as it relates to the political in the United States? Because we are obviously, like, the duopoly is very strong. We are clearly, like, I don't know if we've never been more divided, but whatever, we're divided, right? It's a forced duopoly, and it just feels like reason is left at the door when it comes to anything my opponent does is automatically bad. And this goes for both sides, right? Like, this is a knee-jerk reaction to anything the other side does. I need to denounce. I need to be against it. It's all this just reactionary, like, binary understanding of what is good and bad. I mean, how do we actually break out of that cycle? Like, is this third influence, this libertarian third-party influence, what actually allows us to do that? Or are we just kind of screwed and we just kind of trend towards, like, alternating extremes as this pendulum just swings back and forth, knocking over everything in its path?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a perfect answer for this. I think a lot of it is cultural. I think people have sort of reached a point of fatigue with it, which is good, but like democratic strongholds, they have not reached fatigue. They want to regroup and find a different way to approach it. And I think that they learned like gender ideology burned people out and it was like too much. So they're going to try class warfare again. So, don't brag too much about how much Bitcoin you have. You're going to have you're going to have people coming after you.
I
Um
lost all mine in a boating accident, luckily.
yes,
So,
yes,
yeah,
very bad boating accident.
it's terrible.
I think the reason that the fighting is worse and worse every election cycle is because more and more is at stake. The more power is consolidated federally, the more there really is to lose. Like, it does matter who the president is. It does matter. We've seen that. And so until we get to a point where it matters less, I think that we're going to continue to fight over it. And, you know, I think Bitcoin is one of the things that can, it can alleviate that situation a little bit as long as we keep it in our hands. Which I think we mostly can do that. I think the way that it's designed, prevents a lot of shenanigans. But yeah, like we just have to have more things like Bitcoin. Like I don't really fully know what those technologies are yet. But the more we have them that move our dependency away from a centralized government, the better that we are going to be. And if we can get just normal people to adopt it, they may start to chill out a little bit and become less invested.
I think I fully agree with that, and it's something I've been thinking about and speaking about a lot lately, which is just this idea that like people forget that the government does not give you rights or give you freedoms, right? You need to take them yourself. Individuals take their freedoms, and luckily we have these amazing tools at our disposal now, like strong encryption and Bitcoin and like Nostr that we're broadcasting on right now, which like nobody can shut this down because it's again a decentralized communication protocol. You've got Cashew, which is built on top of it's eCash built on top of the Lightning Network on top of Bitcoin, and it allows for near perfect privacy, like with trade-offs, right? It's not Bitcoin at its base layer, but the point being we have all these incredible tools at our disposal, but people need to use them. Like you have to use them and you have to be able to actively take that freedom back because like otherwise you're just like, if you expect to have any, you need to do something about it. And I'm curious too. I think so much of what truly moves the needle happens in a very localized level, but people discount that. Where are you at in terms of priorities as far as working at the national, federal level versus trying to move the needle at the local level, the state level? How do you view that, and kind of what do you think is the best path there? I mean, is it obviously like a dual pronged approach, or
Hmm.
is there one that moves the needle more for the average American citizen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a division of labor. And so with me, with the relationships I've cultivated, I have to keep working at the federal level. But, like the Mises Caucus is basically focused on local elections. We want libertarians to like run in a race where you could actually win, and where you can make a difference. So if you're in a small town and your town council has like 5 people, run, you know, you can spend $1,000 and maybe win that race because you knocked every door and sent everybody a mailer and did a couple of appearances. You should do that. And when it comes to issues of like affordability, there are so many taxes at the local level. Like if you can beat those at the local level, if you can get rid of annoying permits that don't let people have like backyard chickens, like if there's no, and be practical about it, by the way, if your town has no backyard chickens, like go ahead and pass a law that's allowing people to have up to like 20 if you think that'll win, as opposed to like just completely, all or nothing. Like you can do things like that. You can get rid of red light cameras, which cause more accidents, by the way. And then people lose money on like stupid tickets that they should never be, like because you didn't come to the camera's definition of a complete stop when there's nobody in the intersection. Like there's so
Guilty
many.
of that many times.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So is literally every human being. Um, those are the sort of things that you can change locally, zoning restrictions. Oh my gosh. There are, and then there are times where like it's a nuanced situation, but you would know best because you live in your community. Maybe you don't want the entire town to turn into renters, and yeah, we're having some problems like that in the city of Austin, Texas, where it's like everybody on the city council is a renter except for like one person. Can you imagine? Like we just narrowly defeated a crazy property tax increase of like 30% because nobody
Oh
owns a
my
home. So they're
God.
like, oh, it won't matter to us. It's like, yeah. So you can do a lot.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You can do a lot at the local level. And, I think that you should spend more attention at the local level and just pop up once or twice a year to deal with some federal issue, like if you want to run a spoiler kingmaker candidate, do that. But don't make it like your life's work, like that's like a 5-month project and then go back to your life.
I mean, I think that that's great advice. And again, people often, for whatever reason, just discount that local power, right? Even though
Yes.
it's the thing that really does affect your day to day life the most. Like, yes, what happens in the federal government matters, right? It matters who we happen to be waging war. I mean, not officially waging war with, because right, we haven't actually, Congress hasn't declared war in a very, very long time. But
Quite a
that's a
while.
whole different story. Yeah, quite a while. But what happens in your local community genuinely matters, and it matters to you and your neighbors and like the people that you're around the most, right? And you have the best chance of actually, like you said, you might be able to spend $1,000 and maybe do a little bit of targeted social media, advertising, and send out a couple of pamphlets and go shake some hands and get yourself elected. And I feel like that's what it sort of takes to begin that bottom up approach of reshaping things, because people also forget that the federal government was never meant to be this big. Like, it was never ever meant to be this big. Like, our founding fathers are certainly rolling over in their graves,
Yeah.
seeing what's happening now. Do you have any thoughts on that, on just, I guess, ways to meaningfully shrink the federal government? Because it seems that at the federal level, no matter which side is in power, even the quote conservatives, it's like the government just keeps getting bigger and bigger and more
Yes.
bloated. And even the Doge initiatives didn't, I mean, I think Elon Musk truly tried there. I
He
think
did,
that was very
absolutely.
disillusioning for him, but
Yeah.
he couldn't even move the needle with that, even after finding all this waste.
They
What do you
cut
think about this?
they
Is
cut
there a way to do it?
they cut like a few hundred. They cut a few hundred. Actually, I don't know. They've cut twice now, so I don't know what the number is. It's not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
It's
close
not
to
nothing.
it's
It's
not
not
close to
nothing, but yeah.
$1 trillion, but it's, yeah. Congress is not gonna do anything. So Congress, when people are like, "I'm running for Congress," I'm like, "Oh, that's very cute." Congress is it's not gonna happen there. There are people in the administration right now, specifically in the Office of Management and Budget, who are zeroing out. That's where USAID was killed. And so getting people into cabinet positions who haven't been it's not that everybody is a swamp monster. That's not the case. But you owe a million people favors and you're just tied up and you become afraid to do something even if you don't have like an unholy allegiance to Pfizer. You don't have the courage to do it. So getting people in, like how we got Kennedy in, getting outsiders into cabinet positions, I think is the best way to do it. And so that's another reason you should do the kingmaker strategy because they can slash. And remember, it's our first time, right? So we're not making all the cuts that we wanted to, but things are getting cut. Like USAID got zeroed out through cabinet appointees. Um, but beyond that, I mean, beyond government, it's just gonna have to be emergent technologies. Healthcare is one where it can definitely happen. And, like there's a lot of controversy over wearables and brain computer interfaces, which is this kind of scary rabbit hole to go down. You look at some of the stuff China's come out and you're like, ooh. Um, but being able to take your healthcare into your own hands and to understand what's going on with your body and to have affordable treatments and just completely bypass the system, that I think is going to help us. It's going to, it can potentially prevent us from flipping to a totally socialized system because when people can't afford healthcare and they can't afford a place to live, that's where they just tend to go nuts. You know, um, if we can, if we can continue to make advances there while also maintaining autonomy over our bodies, I think that that will stave off, the giant growth of the federal government and all that stuff. And then obviously housing, you know, you're seeing a lot of pod houses now on Amazon. It's like a little discouraging. Um, if we can find some technology where people can just build from the ground up and it's cheaper, like water, sewage, plumbing, all that, if that stuff also becomes more affordable, then I think that will also alleviate some of the pressure right now. Because like Gen Z, they can't afford homes. That sucks. That's not That's not good, and so they're gonna be incentivized to grow government because that's the solution that they see right now.
I think that that's such an important point when it comes to the younger generation is understandably they don't have any hope for the future because they look at this and they see the boomer who bought their house for two raspberries in the 70s and now it's worth $3 million, telling them to just pull themselves up by their bootstraps and just go hand in your resume at the local store and they'll hire you and then you'll work a 9 to 5 job and you'll be able to buy a multi-million-dollar house just like I did. And it's like, no, that's just like from a obviously I come at this through a Bitcoin lens and it's like, well, you can't afford anything because the money's broken. Because there was a post on X recently, a guy, it was some boomer being like, and not all boomers are bad. I know a lot of really amazing,
There's
super
some good
based
ones,
boomers.
yeah.
There's some really great ones, but this guy happened to be one of the bad boomers. And it was like, oh, you want to buy a house? Cool. Well, are you, doing like enlisted all these different things, right? And the reality is like that has nothing to do with you being able to afford a house. What happens, like we've debased the currency perpetually. And it's like, what would really move the needle? Like you want to buy a house, build a time machine, go back to 1971, punch Richard Nixon in the face as he's trying to take us off the gold standard. Better yet, go back to 1913, make sure, walk into Jekyll Island, and maybe nobody leaves Jekyll Island,
Yeah,
like, I don't
yeah.
know. And maybe that fixes a lot of the problems that we have right now. I don't know if can be considered a call for violence if I'm talking about people that are long dead. So yeah, we'll see.
Right,
Maybe YouTube will pull
well,
this later, but
leftists talk about going back in time and killing baby Hitler, so, it's
there you go.
yeah.
So I think I'm clear on this one, right?
We could
But no,
also
it's like
just
they're understandably frustrated. Like you can
yeah,
see why they have no prospect of getting ahead. This is why Bitcoin is a really powerful tool for them. But the problem is even there, then they will look at it and say, well, Bitcoin's at $100,000. I've already missed the boat there. You look for more and more destructive sort of, let's say like gambling schemes to essentially try and get yourself ahead. And none of those really work. Like your best bet would be to just try and create value and focus on your craft and save in Bitcoin because the government's not going to save you.
I tell
The
people
monetary system is not going to get any better.
yeah.
And it's like, maybe if we end the Fed and massively shrink the government and stop, taking so much from people in taxes, you'd have a chance at getting ahead. But I just don't see the Fed ending or the government shrinking meaningfully anytime
Same,
soon.
same. I don't see the Fed ending, and, I think we can put a lot of people in who are passionate about ending the Fed, and they are going to have their hands tied. And it's not because they're not true believers. Like I know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wants COVID shots completely away, gone. People are screaming in the MAHA movement, why aren't all the COVID shots just gone? It's not always that easy. You make an order, you're like, such and such is illegal, it's done. And then you get hit with a bunch of lawsuits and regulatory you know, and you're just like, "This is insane," That's what ending the Fed is like. I want it ended, but I think it's been designed in a way that we can never push the red button. The red button is elusive. It's the princess is always in the next castle. So we just have to make it like nearly irrelevant. Nearly irrelevant. Um, if you have like almost no money, I would say go get $5 in Bitcoin. Like I know it sounds like so silly, but like add $5, get $100 in Bitcoin, just add a little bit. Because it is gonna grow. We've seen it. It'll continue to do that. And yeah, I think you'll be in a better position. It's like maybe it sounds silly.
I don't think it sounds silly at all. And like, I tell people all the time, just buy a little bit every day or every week.
Yes.
Like, and if you buy a dollar a day or $5 a week or whatever it might be, that may not seem like a lot, but that does move the needle. And again, if you're young, the one thing you have on your side is you have time on your side, right? And Bitcoin does incredible things if you are patient. And so that's where I hope that more young people find Bitcoin. A lot of just from my own analytics that I have and talking to other people who are educators in the Bitcoin space, a lot of the demographic is I'm a millennial, millennials to Gen X to early boomers. Like it's heavy on the millennials and Gen X side. The Gen Z side is harder to reach, right? Because I'm considered ancient to them already, and like I'm
Yeah.
not even like so far removed. So like it's stuff we need more Gen Z Bitcoin podcasters, I guess.
We do. We do.
To
I mean,
step into that role.
I think another really important thing about adopting Bitcoin, even if it's just like a little bit, is it starts to give you a paradigm shift. And so you're moving your attention away from like being hopeless to being solution oriented, and you may start to notice other opportunities. Like it is really like abysmal and depressing to think like, oh, I'm 26 years old. I went to college. I got a college job and I live in an urban area where I can only afford a one-bedroom apartment. It's like a pretty nice apartment, but it's one bedroom. I don't think I could afford to have a stay-at-home wife and a child, and it's like you have to just like you have to start to like shift your perspective in some way, I think, in order to escape that that trap. And it's like the first thing is to just literally look, just like look for something else, a different way.
And I think again, like just having hope goes a long way in that,
Yes,
right? If you
absolutely.
have no hope, you're not going to work very hard for anything because it's like, well, what's the point? If you have even a glimmer of hope, then you will work your ass off because that glimmer starts to get brighter and brighter. But you need to just have that spark, and I hope that Bitcoin can be that spark for more and more people. And it's heartening too to see things like Square just like a couple days ago made their Square terminals basically you can accept Bitcoin now. Like any of their
Yeah,
4 million merchants
yeah,
can accept it. And like Bitcoin as a medium of exchange is also such an important thing. Just overall, like the freedom to transact being, in my opinion, fundamental in terms of allowing all of our other freedoms to be taken by us. Like it's really hard to organize and to protest and to pay your phone bill to use the internet if you don't have money, if your money can be frozen by the state, right? And so
yep,
like normalizing Bitcoin as a medium of exchange and as a store of value, but to young people it's like, man, you can just start accepting Bitcoin for work that you do. That's the beautiful thing about like the gig economy gets a lot of grief, but if you do
yep,
gigs and they're paid in Bitcoin, that's a different story. Like that's a way to get yourself out of that gig economy eventually.
yep, yep. I get paid in Bitcoin. It's really cool. It's really cool.
It's the best. It feels like it should be illegal, but thank goodness they haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah, yeah. I will continue to fight against that. Trying to get these guys out of prison is like they're the tip of the spear. You know, they're the tip of the spear. We gotta protect them because they're protecting us and they're making all of this possible for us.
Maybe a good opportunity here to just okay. So you mentioned a few of the cases, the Bitcoin fog, the tornado cash. We talked about Samurai a little bit. Are there any other cases right now that you're looking
Yes.
at, or that you'd really like to call attention to for people to kind of make some noise about?
Yeah, Ian Freeman is another one. His website is freeiannow.org, I think. Yeah, freeiannow.org. So Ian Freeman ran Bitcoin ATMs in New Hampshire and they busted him. It's the same. They're like, you're not properly licensed. You're not, you haven't complied with all the regulatory stuff. No one was hurt. They went after him because they said, well, some people used your Bitcoin ATMs to commit scams. And it's like, he had better know your customer policies than most major financial institutions. He actually stopped some elderly people from being scammed. It's just, and of course, none of the people who actually committed scams, they didn't even go after them or attempt to, because that's not really what it's about. It's that they don't want people, they don't want us to have financial freedom, you know? I think that the judge that locked Ian up was also one of the Defy judges, who's like issuing ridiculous rulings, trying to tie up President Trump. It's just crazy. So yeah, Ian is innocent. He's in prison right now, unfortunately, federal prison. So I'm trying to get him a pardon. Um, it's I feel good about it. I mean, I feel optimistic because I know that President Trump recognizes how important the Bitcoin community is and how Bitcoiners helped him get elected. So, I'm hoping, definitely hoping that that will push the needle a little bit and that Ian can get a pardon before the holidays. Roman Storm also, and with Tornado Cash, which was more tied to Ethereum, but it's the same situation. And these guys have just been same with Keone Rodriguez, like, they have just been financially drained. This is lawfare, you know? So donating to these guys, you know, like, please do. They have tons of legal bills. Attorneys are very expensive. And, you know, we're really hoping that the Samurai Wallet guys can get a pardon. I think they have to report in for prison in like 5 weeks. So we're
God,
working really hard to get pardons before then.
it's just insane because not like all of these archaic or not even necessarily archaic, these just let's say fiat world laws
Yes.
being applied to these software developers. To anyone who looks at this just impartially and logically, it's just absurd, right? It's patently absurd. There's no like it seems insane to make the case. Like the Samurai case is a great example where it's like they weren't even I forget the exactly one time, but FinCEN basically said, no, you don't really need this license or whatever. And then that's
Correct.
exactly what they were charged for was need that they did it without the license. So it's like there's not even consistency amongst the different departments, which is equally insane. But I mean, I would hope President Trump obviously understands lawfare, right?
Yes. Yes,
He
he
has been a
does.
victim of it himself. I mean, does that give you some hope that he's like going to be able to kind of move quickly with some of these things? Like, because he
Absolutely.
knows what it's like to be on the receiving end, right?
He does. I mean, it's crazy. I like had dinner with him while all this was going on for him. You know, it makes me optimistic about Ian. The feds hated Ian. You know, he was really a thorn in their side. He was a very outspoken libertarian. And when talk radio was big, he was a host of Free Talk Live, which used to be like a really big radio show. Um, which I think would probably also make like he was a public figure, you know. They went after him for things like that. They don't want people being loud. They don't like emergent technologies. The Biden administration, you know, went after all these guys. They also went after Roger, you know. Thankfully that case was dismissed and reached a settlement. You know, he was facing 109 years for tax evasion allegedly, and the feds basically like raided his attorney's office, kicked in the door and interrogated his attorneys with a gun. I, like if that had been allowed to go, then there's no more attorney-client privilege, not just in big cases like that, but the precedent is set that, you know, you're in a family law situation. Oh, you had a dispute with your ex-wife? Well, she can send the cops in to interrogate your attorney, you know, and now your family's gone. Just like crazy things. Like the free speech issues with Samurai Wallet and Tornado Cash, like any code you write, any new technology, they could say that terrorists could grab it and then you're in prison. So I think that President Trump recognizes this, you know, and his kids are also they're definitely dabbling in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
Right.
Well, you know, it would make sense for him to protect his own children too. So fingers crossed, you know, I spend a lot of time praying about it. I'm in church more often now. Like, dear God, please, 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 please. Um, and I feel optimistic, but it's a lot of work still.
So I mean, and pardons are obviously like really important for these people because these are people's lives we're talking about. This isn't just some academic question, right? This is something like we need some immediate actions that these guys
Yes,
don't need to rot in prison and get absolutely just destroyed even more so than they already have been and ripped apart from their families
it's so
even more
bad.
so than they already have been.
I mean,
But like I was just going to ask going forward, it's like how do we make sure this doesn't keep happening again? Because the pendulum again does swing
yep.
back. Eventually, it will. Like it's when we have a party duopoly, a political duopoly. It's like that pendulum just goes back and forth, and it's a question of how far and how fast it swings and how many people it hurts. How do we make sure that this stuff doesn't just get reignited again with an even more fervent, you know, sickening, sycophantic desire
Yes.
when some commie is in charge? You know, eventually, hopefully that won't happen, but like it might, probably will. I don't know.
Yeah, Congress, ugh, the dirty word. Yeah, they need to pass some laws. They have passed a couple. Congress needs to pass some things protecting Bitcoin. I hate to say it. Um, I think the other thing we need to do is educate Democrats. People on the left, like we cannot just like forget them. People on the left who are in Bitcoin circles, like we can't kick them out. We can't be nasty to them because they need to educate. Like if all the like left wing Gen Z people started using Bitcoin, they would like it has to become like the economic Gaza, I think. Like it's got to become something where lefties like are also really invested because then um they're not going to support politicians who go after Bitcoin.
So I think that's actually a really good point. Is that beyond the political, it is about moving the needle culturally, like making this something that is, because that's the frustrating thing too. I think for a lot of libertarian or right wing Bitcoiners or however they want to identify it, whatever's not left.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, I have these opinions, but like Bitcoin is for anyone who is willing to learn. That's the whole thing. Is that Bitcoin doesn't care. It's agnostic. It doesn't care about your politics. It doesn't care about your gender. It doesn't care about your gender identity. It literally doesn't care, right? And so anyone is free to use it. That's the beauty of it. But I think like the left only ends up hurting themselves, and from the politician's perspective, like Elizabeth Warren only hurts her constituents, right?
Oh,
When
yeah,
she rails
crazy.
against it.
Yeah.
But they don't see that. And to me, it's like one of the most American, aligned with Western values ideas that has ever existed. And it's that separation of money from state and the freedom for anyone to freely transact and use money and save the value of their time and energy in something that the government or the central bank cannot debase. But apparently that's now like a fringe idea or a right-wing idea, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's like, and there's a lot of people doing very good work, I think, reaching across the aisle. Like there's the Progressive Bitcoiner is an
Ro Khanna.
organization that's doing really good work with this, but it's hard, right? Because they've been steeped in this like just dog shit information, honestly, from folks like Elizabeth Warren, and sadly they've lapped it up and haven't gone deeper. But I hope that they do.
Yeah, we need like there needs to be Bitcoin outreach at Berkeley. Like, there needs to be Bitcoin outreach anywhere where there's like a hotbed of leftist activism. There's got to be Bitcoin. It's like you have to proselytize. You have to proselytize. Like I'm a Christian, so I feel like I have kind of like this like evangelistic approach, and I know a lot of Bitcoiners do, and you want to like tell everybody, which is great. Make sure you are telling the people who you perceive to be your enemies. Like those are the people like we got to go after them. We got to go after them on everything. Like that's like the whole like Charlie Kirk thing. We need Charlie Kirk of Bitcoin. That's what we need.
Yeah, it's a very good point because you want your enemies to use Bitcoin. Like
Yes.
that's ideal because again, that's the beauty of it, right? It's money for enemies. And the more enemies that you have using Bitcoin, the less chances that they're going to try to use lawfare against you Bitcoiners just because they disagree with you politically. Like
Yeah.
that's what it comes
We
down
gotta
to, right?
have we gotta have discussions with people who are opposed to it, and we gotta tailor those discussions for all of the people who are listening. Like we want to change their minds. And I think that that is a really good way to protect Bitcoin and our financial. Like one thing that I worry about is, we get a Bitcoin strategic reserve set up and what happens to Bitcoin is kind of not exactly, but it is similar to what happened with gold that they are like, well, now we're confiscating it. So if you have Bitcoin, you got to turn it in. Like I worry about something like
A
that.
6102 type situation with
Yeah.
yeah.
Turn all your
I mean,
Bitcoin in.
yeah. At least with that, I mean, even during the 6102, like a lot of people just said like, well, fuck you. Like I'm not
Yeah,
giving you my gold. And thankfully it's easier to hide, a lot easier to hide Bitcoin than it
it
is to
is.
hide gold.
It
It's more
is. Yeah.
comfortable too, depending on where you're trying to stow it. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like, even if such an order would not be terribly effective, you don't want to see such an order happen. Like you want politicians to ultimately be pro Bitcoin. You want them to be falling over themselves to see who can appeal to Bitcoiners more, right? To try
Yes.
and get their donations, to try and get their votes. Like that's the ideal state. Like, you don't want it to become a political football. It
Right.
may just become that, or, but ideally we don't want it to.
Yeah. I want them to be competing for our votes. That's really what they should be doing. Like that, you're in a good spot where they're not just trying to silence you or ignore you or drown you out, but they're competing to get your attention.
I wanted to ask you too, just the Mises Caucus specifically, because like that's what you were the chair of the Libertarian National Party. You're now the chair of the Mises Caucus, and like just reading over kind of some of the literature that you guys have too, and I think just like the bio of your Twitter is basically like you're focused on Austrian economic literacy, decentralization, privatization, and opposition to war. And it's like, yes,
Yes.
agreed. Those are good things. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, just the dynamics within the Libertarian Party for those who may not be familiar, like how much power do the individual caucuses have, and is this something you're already kind of thinking about and positioning for as we run into the next like presidential election, or how
Yeah.
soon does that start, I guess?
Oh,
The jockeying.
we're recruiting right now. So like there's a major
Okay.
deadline coming up in California on the 17th to be signed up as a party member and registered Libertarian in order to participate in the February convention. We just need as many people signed up as possible. We've been the dominant caucus for several years, but we've experienced burnout and attrition. So I'm trying to restack us with Bitcoiners and Maha especially, because that's what I see as like the future of the United States, our financial health, and our bodily health. Um, we really want to transform the national party so that the express intention is to play kingmaker, caveat being our candidates won't drop out if the major party candidate doesn't give us concessions, or if they're just atrocious. But we want to be fixers, and we have a lot of opposition within the organization, what we call the old guard. Not all of them, but a lot of them are like, no, my baby, you can't destroy, and I'm like, you've had 50 years. There is a real problem with the boomer generation. Not all of them. Some of them are very fine people, but they don't want to pass on the torch. How old is Nancy Pelosi? And she's finally like, I guess I'm finally too old. It's like
God.
your job, whether it's a political thing or a different, private organization, your job is when you rise to the top. And like, this is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm always looking, like I'm mentoring actually someone to take over my place, a really great Bitcoiner from Michigan named Amber Harris. Like, your job is to stay in charge for so long and then identify the next upcoming leader, pass the torch and mentor them and set them up for success. And the boomers did this weird twist where they told all of their children they were very special, very special. You're the most special kid ever. And then they were like, psych, we're not helping you get off your feet. We're not helping you launch. We're destroying the currency. Oh, we think you're too stupid and incompetent to be in charge. And we're going to hold on to it forever. And that same dynamic exists in the Libertarian Party. I hate to say it. When I was running for chair, there's like a 70-year-old man running against me. Just like, with all due respect, why aren't you like offering to advise me? You want to like, no, dude, bro, step down. Like, let younger generations take charge of their own futures. So yeah, so that's one of the dynamics in the party, and then there's just generally people who are more libertine. So they're very passionate about sex, work, and drugs, but they were really bad on COVID. They don't care about war. They're bad on God. They're just silent on it. So those are kind of the dynamics, and I've uncovered, and I'm certainly not done yet. There's a lot of work to be done, but there was some Soros money that went into people who went into the organization in the 90s, and it's all indirect, right? It goes to a foundation, goes to a
Yeah.
foundation, goes to a guy, and then he runs. And it's like, it doesn't go directly, and the Mises Caucus came in and we kind of rooted it out and we tore it up. And I experienced lawfare. I got sued twice for working with President Trump. Our Colorado affiliate, which tried to endorse Kennedy and had this whole liberty pledge with Republicans to basically play kingmaker, like they got sued and torn up. So it's been challenging. Um, but like, I'm not afraid, tip of the spear kind of stuff. Like, someone's got to be the vanguard. So what the Mises Caucus has done, is we have cleaned all of that crap out so that people like you, so that Bitcoiners and people who are like, I don't have time for that drama, so that they can come in and work with us and not have to deal with the drama. It's like, we've been the garbage men of the Libertarian Party.
No, it's well, hopefully a lot of that garbage got taken out.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you as well. This is something that I think somebody you've met actually, Average Gary is what he goes by online, but he's a Bitcoin veteran and just a super great guy. But he had sent me a message before this, just saying, wondering if Angela wants to sue on behalf of all U.S. Bitcoiners because the Samurai case admits Bitcoin is money. This would make cap gains not applicable, maybe. And he clarifies, not a lawyer, but could be fun. Thoughts?
I mean, I could find you an attorney. I'm sure I could find you an attorney. Suing the government is tricky because you have to ask the government permission to sue it. And then it gets to decide yes or no. But yeah, there's some good securities Bitcoin attorneys out there.
Might have ourselves a case there. I want to know too, because I want to be conscious of your time here, because we've got maybe you still have a couple minutes left.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. I wanted to ask, like, because we've talked about a lot of kind of specifics here today, but I wanted to just zoom out a little bit, and I'd love to know, like, what is your thoughts on, or what are your thoughts on just the actual purpose of the state, like the modern state, like not from an academic standpoint, but from a practical standpoint, like what is the state's raison d'être in the modern world?
Yeah, so I think it started as to defend your liberties, to defend your rights. Like your rights already existed, and then we just stuck this thing up to protect your right. And I think it exists now to grow. Like it's a self-licking ice cream cone. Like it exists to grow. And anything that gets in its way is bad, is the enemy. So, it's going to grow and get great, great big, like a big old tumor. Um, yeah, and that's why I'm trying to cut it down a little bit, shave a little off the top.
It's like the purpose of a system is what it does, right? And
Yeah.
the state's purpose seems to be just to continue feeding itself and growing ever more bloated.
Yeah, I think it's profoundly impersonal, and so it's like it's not personal, right? Like it's nature, but it becomes so incredibly impersonal that it's like shocking, the callousness and cruelty, the degree to which it operates, which you see, in these Bitcoin cases. They don't care if they tear your life apart, ruin you. So it's like you don't exist. You're just a resource, and they just gobble you up. It's kind of scary. It's
Is
malevolent, I think,
there,
too.
sorry, say that last part again.
It's malevolent, like
Oh, okay.
you know.
Well, that's the difficult thing is, the old adage of, don't attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence or something like that. But it's like, boy, sometimes there often does seem to be some malice in there, especially with just the vindictiveness of some of these prosecutions, right? That's what I don't understand is like, who wakes up one morning and decides like, I'm going to misinterpret the law to try and screw over somebody because they wrote open source software. I just don't get what's wrong with you that you would wake up and want to do that. I truly cannot comprehend it.
It's like it's very hungry and it perceives you taking away its food, and so it's going to smack you down really hard, really hard. It's generally, I mean, I don't think that it's like really malicious and angry all of the time, but that you experience that as a reaction to anything that it views as a threat to its existence. And so it's like you just have to be on the lookout. Like I tiptoe really carefully, please and thank you, please and thank you. And I try not to, I don't know, piss off the wrong people. I do, sometimes, but I try not to go out of my way to do it.
I think that that's a difficult thing. It's a very difficult line to walk. And you obviously do it very well. But I think for a lot of people, and this is why I guess like anonymity and pseudonymity online is also a really powerful tool, right? But there's also something powerful about actually putting your face or your name or both behind something that you're doing to show that, look, like you can't just write this off as a bot. This isn't just a Russian bot farm, right? This is a real person. But when you put your face out there, you put your name out there, you are opening yourself up to to threat vectors, either from the state or from, various actors. Like there's a lot of people that benefit from the status quo, and it's a difficult line to walk to figure out how hard can you push without, being being taken out or silenced or having lawfare used against you. Like lawfare seems to be the the easiest way for them to do it, and it's the one that
Yeah.
they can justify because they don't have to technically. It's not viewed externally as using violence, but like if you resist arrest, like when the FBI kicks in your door, they'll kill you, right? Like, so it's
It's
like
crazy, and
it's tough.
they use individuals to do it too, it doesn't always just come from the state. Yeah. I mean, I could tell you, being in the Libertarian Party, like the lawsuits and attacks I've gotten, they're not all just from like people. They're from organizations that propped up a particular person. And most of those organizations used to receive US aid. Um, it's it's very it's very thorough. I'm curious to see where the money will be coming from next year on all of this stuff. And we're like a small fry. There are other organizations who the attacks are just insane. And then, I mean, yeah, they pull out the big guns for guys like Samurai Wallet. They just go straight at them.
Well, I saw an interview you did maybe a couple of months ago with Ian Freeman's wife, and
Bonnie,
just
yeah.
talking about like her talking about the experience of what happened and when the FBI came in, like basically the FBI stalks you for a while and then claims that they like, oh, we didn't even know that you were his wife or that you were there, and it's like, yeah, of course you did, you liars. Like it's just, it's insane that you can just be made a target and then made an example of. And really, unless there's, folks advocating on your behalf, like unless you have some sort of an audience, like so much of this, like can just be swept under the rug and you can just be kind
Totally.
of disappeared and put away. Like, I mean, I'm glad we have social media now because that gets harder even for people who are, very, quote, small fries, but it's still like if they can do this, to President Trump, like, of course they can do it to you, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, like poor Roman Sterlingov, who was not even he wasn't a US citizen. He has a he has a Russian name, but I think he's Swedish. I think. I could be butchering that. Like they caught him. He was coming through the United States to go to on vacation in South America. And he was just changing airports. They pulled him out and nabbed him. And he doesn't have a strong support base in the United States. So like he's just like locked up. And I reach out to him regularly just to be like, hey, like I'm trying to get you out. I'm still fighting for you. It's taking some time, but like if you don't have that support base, like you just get swallowed and forgotten. It's so incredibly impersonal the way that it operates.
For people who are listening right now and who are hopefully angered by this lawfare being used against software developers specifically, what is the best way for people to take meaningful action to move the needle, to get involved?
Yeah. If you go to freeiannow.org, sign his petition, that would be great. I'm going to be launching one for all of them soon at cryptoprisoners.com.
I'll
That
add
one
that in the
just
show notes.
Okay, great. That just went live and we'll have the petition up within about 24 hours. And I mean, you need to make your voice known in the midterms. You need to, whether it's social media. I mean, I highly recommend you join the Mises Caucus and help us with our Kingmaker strategy. I think there are going to be candidates who are running on this particular issue, and they need to be loud and they need to make their voice heard. They I try to always be the carrot, right? I'm the carrot. I'm sweet. I want to have a really good relationship with the administration. Someone needs to be the stick. And so I need a bunch of sticks. And that's the dynamic that we have to operate in, right? I can't do it, but you can be the stick.
I I love it. So if you're out there and you are feeling more like a stick than a carrot, reach out and get involved. And yeah, I'll share both the freeinow.org and the Crypto Prisoners website just in the show notes for people so they can check those out. But really, I do encourage people to use the voice that you have. It's also like it's never been. I sort of jokingly, but also not at all jokingly, very often tell people like you should just start a podcast. Like you
Yeah,
should just do that. You should just start creating media. And it's joking because there's this joke about, we need more Bitcoin podcasts. We don't need more Bitcoin podcasts. There's too many.
right.
The point being, like, there's never been a time before in history where independent voices could make themselves heard so easily as you can today. And like, so like, look at in the last election, like talk about, media moving the needle, like podcasts. President Trump going on long form podcasts, and a bunch of them moved the needle for him meaningfully,
Yes.
especially with younger voters. Like, this makes a difference. So like, get involved, speak up, make your voice heard, start a podcast, start evangelizing for whatever it is you care about, because you can actually move the needle now. And when you have that, you become harder to silence too, because then you have a platform. So, make use of it, make use of the tools that are at our disposal, and get yourself on Nostr as well. We need to get you back using it more. It's,
I do.
you
I need
dropped
to
off a
use it
little
more.
bit.
I need to use it more. Yes. So I am on it. I just need to use it.
I'm gonna blast out your account here.
Please do. I
A
was
few
struggling
times
to
leading.
put in a proper profile picture. I was at
Don't
the I was at the Lake Satoshi is a Michigan Bitcoin festival, and the guys there set me up with it. It was it was like kind of hilarious. They were all
Awesome.
making it happen.
I love it. Well, that's the beautiful thing. Bitcoiners and folks on Nostr are always happy to help others get started, right? That's kind of the
Yes.
beauty of it. Angela, thank you so much for your time. This was really a pleasure talking to you. You're welcome back. Truly anytime. Is there anywhere else you want to send people or direct them? Did we cover enough? Anything you want to leave people with if nowhere else to send them?
I think, I think we got it. You can make a difference. Don't feel like you can't. 1% of the population can change the course of history.
I say amen to that, and that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks to everybody who joined live on Nostr too. Again, this is, if you're listening to this after the fact, this is your sign to go and get on Nostr, so that when they inevitably ban you from centralized social media, you have somewhere to still speak and be heard. But Angela, really, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap on this Bitcoin Talk episode of the Bitcoin Podcast. Remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're watching or listening, and share it with your friends, family, and strangers on the internet. Find me on Nostr at primal.net/walker and this podcast at primal.net/titcoin. On X, YouTube, and Rumble, just search at Walker America. And find this podcast on X and Instagram at Titcoin Podcast. Head to the show notes to grab sponsor links. Head to substack.com/@WalkerAmerica to get episodes emailed to you. And head to bitcoinpodcast.net for everything else. Bitcoin is scarce, but podcasts are abundant. So thank you for spending your scarce time listening to the Bitcoin Podcast. Until next time, stay free.